This is Jordan Blade, and you are watching O Face Wrestling.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today on O Face Wrestling. This is your host JT, and today I am joined by Jordan Blaze. So thanks for joining us today, Jordan.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm super stoked.
Me too. I like I mentioned before the recording, I've seen you live before. I was really impressed with your match, and it's not that often where I get wrestlers on my show that I've actually seen live. Majority of them, I've yet to get the opportunity to see wrestlers. I think this is a pretty cool opportunity for me.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to be on. I've seen you do other podcasts with other talent, and so I'm just honored to be in the same on the same podcast as them.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is because I like I mentioned, I've seen you at Primetime Wrestling. I've had a decent amount of wrestlers from that show on here, and it's like it was really slow at first. 'Cause when I first started getting wrestlers on the show, it was two wrestlers a month, and then my list that I had just kept growing and growing. So I was like, you know what, I need to start adding more wrestlers each month to catch up because it just gets overwhelming. Like you have no, well, actually, I don't want to say you have no idea because I know you have an idea. There's thousands of wrestlers out there, and I just keep discovering new, wrestlers every single month. So it's just like I feel like I just have to kind of amp it up just to catch up and get you all on the show.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, like, I don't run a podcast, so I can only imagine like how much time and energy it must be to contact these people and then coordinate times and try to edit things and all that. Like, I could not do that. I literally just go out there like in my semi underwear and like get beat up for however many minutes and then go home. And that's it.
See, what you do is a lot more tougher than what I do. Like, and I'll be honest with you, it's actually not really that hard. I mean, all the editing stuff that I do is very simple. It takes me like 20 minutes to put together an episode. It's just more so coordinating the times and stuff like that. Finding something that works best for both of us. Because the unfortunate thing with me is I have to be up at 4 a.m. for work, so I try not to do anything like too late. So that's like the only challenge for me. Luckily with you, this is kind of earlier in the day, so I have no problem with that. So I think that's great. That works for me.
Sweet.
So now with the questions, the most generic question you probably get asked, but I gotta have this on my show, and so what inspired you to become a professional wrestler?
Man, so I started, I say like, oh, I was 3 or 4, or whatever. I started watching wrestling when I was 12, so kind of past the point where, um, I guess for most kids, like the magic's gone or whatever, because we're grown at 12, right? And kids at that point start realizing like wrestling's quote fake. So, but I got into it like a little late, and I just remember being over a couple of my friends' house, and they had a little brother, and he had SmackDown on, and I was like, "What is this?" And like from then on, I was just captivated, and so like they had a trampoline in their backyard, so I would just like go on the trampoline and do like wrestling moves to mainly their little brother, not them, but their little brother because he was light and everything. And there was something there that at 12 years old I was like, I want to do that. Like obviously at that point I played basketball since I was like 6 years old. And I had, dabbled in other sports, like karate or whatever. But wrestling was the first, well, I shouldn't say first, let me not lie. I wanted to be a basketball player at that point. But wrestling was just it, like I said, it captivated me, right then. So and it was something that I couldn't like get off of my mind. Like I would think about wrestling all the time. Like we had binders and stuff in middle school and in high school, but mainly in middle school. And, at the time, like everyone was kind of decorating their binders with different things. Like, my friends would probably put like Kobe Bryant on there, RIP, or other basketball players, or like like teen heartthrobs or whatever, I had like wrestling on every single binder, like, and some of them were themed, and I put a lot of work into them too, like wasting my mom's printer ink and stuff like that, like just printing pictures of like Team Extreme and John Cena and everyone, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, and putting them on my binder, but like I to the point where I was clearly like obsessed with it. And I probably still in middle school, I made my mom a PowerPoint presentation of different wrestling schools that I wanted to go to, like did my research and everything. And I was like, Mom, like I really want to do this, and like I'll be really good. And like I always had good grades and stuff like that. I was like, I'll do whatever you want. Like I was like, you're gonna have to pay for it, but I'll do whatever you want. Like other than that. And it was funny because my stepdad at the time was like, oh, it's just a phase, blah, blah, blah. And I look at him now too, like, and I kind of make fun of him. I'm like, do you think it's still just a phase or whatever? Because he's calling me last month. He was like, hey, I'm at this Barnes and Noble at whatever Barnes and Noble he was, and I can't find the PWI that you're in. I was like, is it the Barnes? Are you at the Barnes and Noble on like wherever it was? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I bought them all. Like I was just there earlier like I think earlier that day or the day before, and I bought like all of them. And I was like, you'll probably have to go to another one. I'm sorry. But anyway, so every time I see him, I like make fun of him or whatever. Cause I'm like, is it still just a phase, But yeah, that's kind of like the genesis of how it started.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting because, like you said, like it is very common for a kid, middle school, high school. They go through that phases. I did the same thing. I wanted to be a baseball player. Obviously, when I got older, I realized, hey, this is kind of hard. It ain't easy to get into like a professional athletic sport, especially wrestling, because you don't have like a wrestling class at your school. I mean, not like this kind of wrestling, obviously, but like you have to venture off and find the schools, and if you're lucky, it's some semi nearby and stuff like that. So it is very challenging. And like the one thing that is really annoying for any wrestling fan, I'm sure wrestlers as well, is when people use the word fake. Like that is like it is the most offensive word you could ever use to a wrestling fan. Like because yeah, the matches are choreographed and fixed, but like you're really putting your body on the line, taking bumps and all that, and people don't realize unless you actually go to a live event how loud it really is. Growing up, I thought it was like padding on the ring. It's wood right under there. It's very loud, and I could just imagine, like I see wrestlers that be taking bump after bump after bump each and every match. And if I took one bump, I would probably not be able to get up. Like it's everyone says you have to develop that callus, and obviously it just doesn't happen after a few matches. It takes time and all. But yeah, like I think that's really impressive that you actually put together like a PowerPoint and all to convince your
Oh,
mom for you.
definitely.
Like I've never heard that one before, and I think that's really great. Like that just shows how dedicated you are. Because like when I wanted to be a baseball player, I didn't do anything like that. I just played baseball, and that was kind of it. Then my mom always kind of like, was that person, oh, you know how hard it is to do that, yada, yada, yada. But it's really cool that, you're doing it. And I think that's great. So that being said, so far in your wrestling career, what is some of your most proudest moments?
True. So definitely, being the first ever primetime tag team champions with Eel O'Neill, my bro. Um, Man, I think the end of my 2020 was, I said this before to someone else, like my 2020 was like heavy, like bookendish. Like the first part of 2020, like January to March was great. And then obviously, the pandemic hit or whatever. And like most pro wrestlers found themselves out of work as far as, wrestling goes. And then I had maybe like one match late in the summer, and that was it. And then November, December was super great for me. Um, so I would say like my match with Trish Adora at Synergy Pro Wrestling, that's probably my favorite match so far, and the match that I'm most proud of. I look back at a lot of my matches, and I cringe, and I think that's a lot of pro wrestlers because I mean we're our own worst critics, right? So I'm like I don't want to watch it, or like I did this and this wrong. You know, I don't even want to like watch it back. But that match, I watched back and I was really proud of it, and I did that match on like 3 hours of sleep because the day before I was at Paradigm. So I was Paradigm Pro Wrestling. So I was in Indiana. And that was kind of my first, like, kind of like doing the drives, as they say, for wrestling. So that Paradigm, we did like, we taped for, I was there for like 10 hours and we finished up at like 1 a.m. My flight on Saturday was at 6 a.m. So I went back to the hotel, got like a 3 hour nap, or got back shower, got like a 3 hour nap, had to be at the airport by like 4:30, and then my flight's at 6:30. I got back to Richmond at, and I would like enough time to like eat, take care of the animals, like unpack and repack, and then drive up to Pennsylvania for Synergy. So like that whole weekend, like I was proud of just because it was giving me so much anxiety about like being away and essentially going into the negative, for a dream that could potentially be fleeting. But there's a lot of like what ifs and like is what I'm doing right? And deep down, obviously, I know that was the case, because wrestling has been my dream for who am I, 28, so like 16 years I've been doing that match rate. Um, so like I've known for that long this is what I want to do, and I obviously know the sacrifices. Um, and my wife is like super supportive of everything. When I was like, "Hey, should I do this?" And she's like, "Yeah, why not? Like, tell me what you need from me, and I got you." You know. So like I said, that whole weekend, like, I was just like super proud of that. Um, but yeah, I'm sure there's things. Oh, obviously, I'm being in PWI. That was pretty cool. So I'm sure there's things I'm missing, but that's off the top of my head right now. So.
Yeah, definitely being a part of the PWI. That's a really big deal. That is the number one wrestling magazine in the world, at least from my knowledge. And I know it's definitely like it's a big deal being on that, and I think that's really cool. And like you were just talking about, like how like great the first, well, I don't, kind of the first quarter, I guess you say, of 2020, and then the pandemic hit. That was that was a really low point with wrestling, because obviously a lot of people were out of work and stuff like that. And I remember, because I had just started kind of going to indie shows regularly like late in 2019, so it seems like right when I got into this, the pandemic happened and everything like that. And it depends on the area you live into, because because I live in Maryland, so there has been no wrestling for almost a year. No, nothing in Maryland. I don't even think anything in DC, which where Primetime was at. And that's just very unfortunate, because like Primetime, that was, out of all the events I've been to, that was the one I enjoyed the most. It was just, the crowd was just, they were on fire the whole show. It was the most diverse wrestling environment I've ever been in, and it was such a great feeling being there and just seeing how happy everyone was. No one was chanting anything ignorant. Everyone was just having a great time. And you had also mentioned with like the traveling and all, is that something that you do regularly, or do you kind of like stay in kind of the same area usually?
So traveling for wrestling is something that I've always wanted to do. And I knew when I first started, like the areas that I wanted to go to, because I mean, they're the hot spots, right? So the Northeast, the Midwest, certain parts of North and South Carolina, Florida, and like Texas, California. So those are kind of the spots for me. And so just recently I've been able to kind of break into the Northeast a little bit more, and the Midwest. So I'm like, cool, that's like two of the areas where wrestling's hot right now, like the Midwest, especially Indiana, um, really like Indiana and Illinois, kind of that area, that's popping right now. And then the Northeast, at least since I've been a fan of wrestling has always been. Unfortunately, it's not anymore, and it hasn't been for a while, and that's unfortunate because obviously I'm from here, and it's not so much that man, like I wish we had more wrestling in the Mid Atlantic, so I wouldn't have to drive so far. But it's like, and I'm sure you know, like your friends find out, oh, you're a wrestler, whatever. When can I come see you? And it's like, so the closest I'm wrestling is DC, or the closest I'm wrestling is Maryland, and they don't want to cross the border. So, and I get it. I don't take it personally or whatever. So when your friends and family want to come see you, that's when it kind of, at least for me, I know, makes the difference. And I mean, there's nothing like getting that, hometown pop, so um that's really the only reason why I'm just like, man, I wish the Mid-Atlantic was how, as far as how, popping it was for wrestling, like it was like in the 80s and stuff. But it's just not and it makes me sad, but it is what it is. So if I have to travel to the Northeast, if I have to travel to the Midwest, wherever I gotta go, with me, one of my goals though, is to make British wrestling is kind of one of that's obviously other than technical wrestling, jiu-jitsu, but you know British wrestlers and British wrestling is the closest to what I would do um, in the ring. So I mean, that's one of my goals is to get over there. So if my coach Chris Sharp is listening to this, let me see at your. Chris he wasn't my first trainer, but he kind of stepped in when I was at a point where I was at a plateau, at least in my opinion. I don't know where he was, but he had moved back to Virginia, and he was kind of just trying to figure out where to go from there and stuff. And one of my boys, Timmy Danger, hit him up and was like, "Hey, got this group of people who are wrestling in a barn in the middle of nowhere. Like, you should come up." And from then on, he just kind of took us under his wing and stuff like that. So he trained us for about, I would say, like a year and a half. And then he got signed as a referee to WWE NXT UK. So he is over there doing his thing, and I'm super proud of him.
Well, that would be really cool if you were able to travel to the UK then, because then you would obviously be able to reconnect with him over there and stuff like that. It seems like wrestling in the UK, a lot of wrestlers, that it seems to be one of their big goals, and I understand why, because it's a completely new environment. Of course, traveling to the UK in general must be like a really fun thrill. Getting to see some of the things down there. I've had two wrestlers from the UK on my show, and it's just like hearing their stories, about the wrestling in the UK. It seems really like a really fun environment down there. Everyone seems really nice as well too, which is cool. The one thing that you mentioned too about like when it comes like the venturing off a little further, you may not have friends or family who are willing to, make that travel, which is understandable. Traveling can be very stressful, but the one good thing about nowadays though is, the thing that seems to be getting really, really popular in wrestling with the indies is streaming. A lot of these independent promotions are streaming now, and I think that's really cool. You got the Title Match Network as one of the big streaming networks. So it does give people that opportunity to still see you wrestle. It's obviously better seeing them in person live, but there is that opportunity as well. And and like you mentioned, like some areas are more popular than others when it comes to wrestling. I noticed like New Jersey and the New York area, that seems to be like always popping off with wrestling. That seems just like it's a gold mine for wrestling. Now Texas, I never knew how big of a state, a wrestling state Texas was, and me as a fan, that's actually one of my goals, to go up to Texas and watch wrestling. I'm a big fan of Mission Pro, so I really would love to go to one of their shows as well.
Yeah, man. Because I know Mission Pro's down there. So that's one of the shows that I want to eventually get on. A few of my friends are wrestling down there and stuff. Um, but yeah, I don't think I realized until a couple years ago how big, wrestling in Texas was. I mean, obviously, Booker T has his gym down there. So, not trying to discredit him at all. But like, at least for me, I know I didn't think about Texas. I know again from the get-go for me when I started, I was like northeast, northeast, northeast. And that was about it, until I kind of learned about everything. So
Yeah, and like for me, like when I got back into wrestling in 2010, I had no idea there was really wrestling outside of WWE period. And then I found out about Impact, and then I found out about MCW. So I was like, wow, and a smaller wrestling promotion. And then MCW, I thought that was one of the very few for the longest time. And then when I really started dipping into like, indies, in 2019, I was like, wow, they got it here, here, here. It's everywhere, and it is insane how popular it really is and everything like that. So now I got another question for you. Now this is kind of one of those like if you had either like a friend or family member who was getting into wrestling, what would be the most important thing that you would want them to know about getting into the wrestling business?
important thing. Oh man. Find your best friend because unfortunately in wrestling and a lot of other venues too, into the entertainment industry in general, and in real life, like you're gonna have your people who say they're your friends and they're just trying to use you to get a leg up, and they may backstab you or whatever. Also, wrestling can be very um, it can get you down sometimes. I I don't like using the word depressed because there people out here with actual clinical depression and stuff like that. But wrestling has gotten me to points where at most like I was just very sad, down on myself, thought that no one was paying attention, thought that I wasn't any good, and I go through those that flux of emotions every my friends and I joke about it maybe like once a month or, so, or something. Um, and you kind of need those people to kind of bring you out of that. And I would say as far as best friends in wrestling, again, other than my bro Eel, my two best friends in wrestling are Erica Lee and Sledge Gibson. And I know a lot of people don't know who Sledge Gibson is, but so I've trained with Erica and I trained with Sledge as well. And Sledge, in my opinion, is underrated. Um, he he doesn't think he's as good as he is, which is like a staple of my personality, right? um, but I just think the world of him, and I think he's very talented. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But I would say and it's not gonna happen right away, but like find those people that you gravitate to, especially if you're going to wrestling school, which is another thing I would say. Find a credible wrestling school, and I know it's hard, um, to find those because more often than not, you don't have those credible wrestling schools. You just kind of have like a little haphazard, kind of makeshift wrestling school where they're interested in is taking your money and they don't care whether you succeed or not. They just are like, first of every month, all right, $200, where is it? Or, however many $1,000 up front or whatever. Um, so I would say, I know this is two things. You said one, but
There's no problem at all.
but definitely do your research. Monster Factory is great. Where Danny Cage is. Nightmare Factory is great. Booker T's gym is great. Hybrid Wrestling School that's in San Antonio. They're great. I can't remember the name of their school, but Chris Silvio and Matt Seidel have a wrestling school down in Florida. I think it's in Clearwater. They're great. So, you know, like I said, do your research. So, you don't get scammed, because people unfortunately prey upon people who don't know what they're doing, and get into something, they prey upon people who, oh my God, it's been my dream since I was X years old to do this. And they just take your money and don't really do anything with you.
Yeah, and like the sad thing is I've heard that a lot from, a lot of wrestlers on the show, and it's like I shouldn't hear that much, but the fact that, you're hearing it so much, there's a lot of people out there scamming, people and taking their money, and that's just really sad that that's the kind of world we live in. But I know, like I've heard of the Monster Factory. I've heard of them. I think that's isn't it in New Jersey?
Yep, Paulsboro.
Okay, yeah, I know a few of the wrestlers from the Goddesses of War event that I've been to. They posted about that. Obviously, like reality wrestling, I've heard tons of good things. I feel like half of the wrestlers I've had on my show have been through that school, which is a good thing. Booker T seems like a really dope guy. I've heard some good things about Ember Moon's school as well. I've had a wrestler that she's gone through that school as well, so I know that's another good school. My one friend actually, she went through the MCW school and she wrestles for them. She's said good things about that school as well.
Uh,
Sorry, what was that you were Can you repeat that? You broke up a little bit.
I'm sorry, my bad. I'm sorry. I was like, I totally forgot MCW. MCW is great too.
Yeah, they are a good school. From what I've heard, and knowing someone firsthand and went through it, I definitely take her opinion as credible. So now I got a hot question for you. It's something I kind of am trying to do with my questions or my shows. So you had mentioned that you originally wanted to be a basketball player, so I have to ask, who's better, LeBron or Michael?
Sure. Okay, in their primes.
In their prime,
In their primes. I gotta go LeBron.
LeBron. What
By
about as
by
a whole career, like everything combined?
I gotta go. This is a hot question. Dang. Okay, all right. As a whole career, Michael, just for what he did for basketball. And I'm not saying that LeBron didn't do anything or hasn't done anything for basketball. He's done a ton of stuff. Um, and this may, I think it depends on who you ask, obviously, but like depends as in how old they are and where they grew up. Like you do have your hardcore basketball fans that are going to know the whole career of Michael, even if they weren't alive when he was in his prime or even when he played or whatever, right? But they're alive career. But for the most part, like if you talk to someone who was just alive or just cognitive, like for LeBron's run or whatever, they would probably say LeBron, right? Um, but I mean, and you always have your goats, right? But I feel like Michael paved the way for LeBron, but you also have that passing of the torch type thing. I think Michael passed the torch to Kobe, and then Kobe kind of passed the torch to LeBron.
Exactly, and that's kind of the one thing that's always bothering me because people are always like, "Oh, MJ or LeBron," and I'm thinking like, why isn't anyone talking about Kobe? Like this guy was a beast as well. Like
Oh
I
yeah.
definitely put him up there in that conversation. But like yeah, like the one thing with Michael is he did it with one team, and I think that's the thing that kind of hurt LeBron. When people make the debates, they say, "Oh, he jumped here, he jumped there," kind of thing. Especially with Miami, he jumped to that super team, and that's when he first won. I haven't been into basketball like I was back when I was like in middle school, so I can't really say how much like he like carried like the Lakers, but I do know like with Miami he had great a great supporting cast, stuff like that. I do like that he did go back to Cleveland and win a championship there. That was something that really he definitely gained a lot of respect from me from that because I was always one of those Michael's better, Michael's better. What are y'all talking about? But when he finally went back to Cleveland, I thought that was great.
Yeah, and I would have said the same thing maybe like a few years ago, like Michael's better. And I feel like overall it might just be comparing apples to oranges. And I haven't been into basketball since I was in middle school. either. Like I'm more of a fan of college sports than professional sports. Like when I was in middle school, I wanted to go to Tennessee to play for the Volunteers to be coached by Pat. So, um, I mean, dang, rest in peace to her too, man. I think that was a sad one when she passed, and obviously, Kobe last year was rough. I remember I woke up from a nap, and of course, when you wake up, first thing you do is check social media, right? And I'm groggy, and I'm like, what? Why is everyone saying, R.I.P. Kobe? I'm like, what in the world? And I saw, and I was like, shit. um, and it was rough because Kobe for me, when I was growing up and paying attention to basketball and stuff, Michael was I think Michael was like in his Wizards career at the time, roughly. Um, and like Kobe and Allen Iverson were the two. So like Kobe was a huge part of like my childhood as far as basketball goes. And so that one hit me hard. And I know some people are like, why y'all crying over celebrities, blah, blah, blah. And it's just like when they become a part of you and like they're so inspirational, because I know two of my best friends, they're twins that like idolize, love Kobe, Lakers' favorite team, Kobe's favorite, Kobe's their favorite player and stuff. One of them got a tattoo of Kobe, um, and it's interesting because like they went on to play, but we played basketball together, and they went on to play basketball longer than I did. I stopped playing basketball, and then I uh, um, did concert band and marching band. I played the French horn when I was in high school, but they went on to continue to play basketball, and their mannerisms about it too. So it's almost like obviously, you're sad for, Kobe's gone, one of the GOATs, especially, his daughter with him. So you're sad for them, sad for the family. And I was like sad, for my friends too. So I'm like, I knew how much they idolized him.
Yeah, that was just a sad time too, because I remember I was in New York because I was going to a Royal Rumble watch party, and it happened the day of the Royal Rumble, obviously, and I just when we went to the watch party, there was a lot of people there. Just you could tell they just weren't fully into the show just because of the whole Kobe thing, and that definitely impacted me too because he's like I'm a '90s kid. I grew up. I definitely loved Michael Jordan and all. I remember loving Space Jam and stuff like that. It was more so I loved Michael. It wasn't the fact that I really followed basketball. Kobe actually got me being a fan of basketball when I was in middle school. And even when I did kind of start getting out of it, I still followed Kobe's career. Like I would still get on like the ESPN app or the website just to kind of see what the Lakers are doing because I always wanted to see what Kobe was doing. And when he retired, it just basketball. I just did not follow it at all. So it just like that was definitely it definitely impacted me when he had passed away. And it's sad the way it happened too. But it's just like at the end of the day, like I feel like he's definitely should be up there with the debate when it comes to like Michael Jordan and LeBron and who's the best. Just because Kobe he was a beast and he won a lot of championships. He did it with one team. He never left the Lakers.
Yeah, and like you have things like Mamba mentality, and you have people saying, they shoot a crumpled up piece of paper, Kobe.
Yeah,
Like
I do that
there's
still.
things that are ingrained in us, yeah, in us in society, that it like is Kobe, and so not saying that Michael. I mean, you mentioned Space Jam or whatever. Not saying don't they definitely are have their stamp on society as well. But I do think those three will kind of transcend basketball years. Roman Reigns, so Becky Lynch, my favorite, but So you kind of have like your big dogs in every entertainment industry that kind of like transcend the industry that they got into in the first place. I mean, you talk about the it factor, you can talk about hustle, you talk about work ethic, you talk about a lot of those things. A combination of those three or whatever. I mean, that's it. That's the reason.
Exactly, and I couldn't agree more with you. And then you brought up the Kobe thing. I have to say that also reminds me of like everyone talks about like getting Moss, like because of Randy Moss. That made me think of that as well. Like that's another just when you are that good at what you do, where people are referencing it, all the time. Because how many people really say like LeBron or so and so is Antonio Brown? It's always Moss or Kobe, like.
Yep.
So now for the next question. So I know we talked a lot about basketball. But other than basketball, what's something about yourself that you're proud of that's non-wrestling related that you would want fans to know?
So like I said, I played French horn when I was in high school. No, okay, when I was in middle school and high school, and so I started when I was in grade, kind of like four electives. I think you had like band, orchestra. What else? Just like shot, like homemaking, and I forgot. But anyways, everybody wanted to do band. And at the time, drumline, I think drumline had just can't come out, right? So everyone wanted to play drums. And my band director in middle school was like, no, no one else is playing drums. I don't need any more percussionists. Pick another instrument. And I was like, what am I going to do now? Because I was like, I was going to play the snare drum and everything. And I was just like, dude, I have no idea what I want to play. And my mom, she played clarinet, bass clarinet, bassoon, and was a flag girl when she was in high school. And I was like, I don't want to play clarinet. So she wanted me to play the clarinet, and she still had hers. And she was like, it'd be cheaper. Like, we can just get it refurbished, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that has too many keys. I don't want to play that. And I was talking to my band director, and it was kind of coming down to the wire where I needed to pick something, right? And she was telling me that I could get a scholarship college if I played horn or the oboe. Well, I was like, the oboe is a mini clarinet, so I'm not playing. Like, all right, well, I guess I'll just play the French horn, has 3 or 4 keys, whatever, fine. She did not tell me that the reason I could get a scholarship to college for playing French horn and oboe is because those are the two hardest instruments to learn how to play. So I was awful when I was in sixth grade. Yeah, I couldn't hit like I was getting the hand placement and the fingerings right, but I was not hitting the notes. I didn't get the concept of the fact that I had to fix my mouth a certain way to be able to play certain notes, right? And one day, I think I was in seventh grade. One day, I had kind of like a harmony or with the clarinets. That's what's that called? Foreshadowing or whatever. Coming back around, I had a harmony with the clarinets, and we were playing the same notes. And I was like, okay, let's. So I was listening to them, and I was like, okay, I think I got it. And I was the only French horn player from my whole middle school career. I was the only French horn player. Um, and it just clicked. And my band director was like, just flabbergasted. So she recommended that I take private lessons. And so I took private French horn lessons from seventh grade, I think, at least until 11th grade, maybe my senior year of high school. I can't remember. But I took private horn lessons. And so I would audition for the all county and all district bands that when it was time. And I was so used to like being the best when I was the only French horn player, because I would always get all these awards, right? The best and like instrumentalist or like the most improved or whatever. I would get them all the time. This sounds like a lot of bragging, but I would get all these awards and stuff in middle school. So I was like, I'm so good, blah, blah, blah. And I would go to these auditions and I'm like, seventh chair, eighth chair. What is this? Excuse me. Like I'm eighth. There must be a mistake. um, but it was a very interesting time. It was very humbling because here are all these other French horn players that I had no idea existed in the county, Virginia, whatever, that are way freaking good. And here I am thinking that I'm something because A, I'm the only French horn player in the whole friggin' my whole friggin' middle school. And B, like I'm getting that are comparing me to everyone else in my band class or all of the band, all of my grade or whatever. But then when I go outside of my bubble, okay, here are all these other people that are better than me. So I just got my ass in gear, to practice and to, just be better. And I played sports since I was 6 years old, and I'd been competitive since I was about 12 years old. Um, yeah, so like I wanted to go to Juilliard to play French horn. I wanted to be in various bands. I wanted to be in drum corps, which I don't know if you know what that is. Um, it's
No.
no clarinets, no saxophones, stuff like that. Yeah, it's just so like a typical like marching band has like all the instruments, whatever, and you just march or whatever. Which I was in marching band. Instead of playing the French horn, I played the mellophone, which is just an oversized trumpet, but sounds just like a French horn. Because it'd be weird to march with a French horn just because of how it's shaped. So, hence why the mellophone exists. But so I did marching band in high school and stuff, but I wanted to be in drum corps, which is just like I said, the just percussion and brass, and they would travel all over the country, and I think all over the world, just marching and doing these competitions and stuff. And that's what I wanted to do. Like I would have to like go away to camp for however many weeks and stuff like that, and it would just be like hours, a day, just like marching and playing your instrument and stuff. And I wanted to do that, but never got the chance to. But yeah, that's a little known fact about me. I was a huge nerd in school.
Yeah, I had a friend who was in the band. I don't know what instrument it's called. There's two metal things where you just literally just like bang it together. Um,
Oh, the symbols.
the cymbals, yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, apparently, like you kind of like you start out doing that and you move on to like other instruments. He never did that. He literally did the same thing from his freshman year to the senior, and everyone would like tease him about that because he's literally doing the same thing for years. But yeah, that like I could never really get into instruments. I tried piano in one of my classes, and I could not do piano to save my life. And I did get a guitar when I was like around like 15, and I got okay at it, but never good enough to like be in a band or anything like that. I tried so hard. I could never do the finger thing where you're just moving your fingers across and stuff like that. I don't know how.
Hard.
Yeah, it's so much harder. Like those guitars make it look so easy, and I thought it would be easy, but no, it is really tough. Like when it comes to instruments, you really need to put a lot of time and dedication to it. In the middle or high school, I did not want to do that. I wanted to play video games and all. I would like practice for like 20 minutes, and then but no, it takes hours. And I had a friend who was like really good at the guitar. He would always be practicing like every day nonstop, and he turned out to be pretty good. But instruments just never were for me, to be honest.
Guitar, yeah. Too. I started playing guitar when I was in seventh grade, and so I would like go to guitar lessons and then go to my private French horn lessons, and then go to basketball practice. And it was just, like my poor mother. Like I'm an only child. I ran her everywhere. She's great though for doing that for a lot of things. But yeah, I wanted to when I was in high school. I wanted to do amateur wrestling, but I was in band, and I knew that all the sports coaches and my band director did not get along because they don't really like when you have to split your time after school for practices, which is understandable. So I was like, well, I'm gonna have to just stick with one, and it just ended up being band. So
Yeah, I mean, whatever, interests you the most and all. And like the one satisfying thing I will say about it an instrument is when you like master a song. It wasn't many songs that I could, master, but I learned a few Blink-182 songs, so their songs tended to be the easiest to learn, and that was just such a great feeling, like actually playing a song, and it was like, wow, I'm doing it.
Right, yeah. Like play that one song over and over again. Like
I did that, yep.
I learned the solo to Misery Business by Paramore, obviously. And I was like, that was like all I would play. And I'm sure my mom
Yeah.
was like, can she learn something else, please? Because this is tiresome.
Yeah, I remember I learned the intro or the one main part to the song Damn It by Blink-182, and I would just constantly keep playing that song. That it did sound like really cool. I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. This is so awesome. I'm a rock star.
Yeah, right.
So now for my final question that I have for you. So where do you want to be at the end of your wrestling career? Like what is your like top, goal for the business?
So obviously I would like to uh go to either WWE or AEW. But obviously, like WrestleMania is my goal, right? Like ideally, right? Wrestling Becky Lynch at WrestleMania for the Raw Women's title. That would be like that would be it right there because Becky's my favorite in WWE. So, um, but overall, like I've always gravitated towards coaching and um I was at a time a strength and conditioning coach and a personal trainer, group fitness instructor, all that. So I got a bachelor's in exercise science from VCU. So I ended up training people, and I played ultimate frisbee in high school and college, and that's how I tore my ACL. But when I tore my ACL, I kind of transitioned into a captain coaching role. And same for basketball. Like my last 2 years playing basketball, I was a team captain. And when I was in high school and playing French horn, there was four of us instead of one. There's four. Like I ended up being like first chair and kind of like leading at least like my section or whatever as a section leader. So I feel as though everything I've done with a passion, I've been able to do at the very least very well because when I enjoy something and when I love something, I put my all into it. So once my wrestling career is over, I would like to become a coach at, at, ideally like the PC or the Nightmare Factory or something like that. Um, but after wrestling, I would also like to be an actress. So like kind of doing that. I always have something going on, some type of venture that's just kind of like how I've been since I've been like at least since I've been in college. Like I'm always, I always have goals, always trying to do something and better myself and stuff like that. I don't for me, at least for me, it's really hard for me to relate to complacency or relate to people who don't have any goals. I'm not talking down on them. I can't relate. Like we're probably not going to see eye to eye as far as that goes. Like I don't understand how there's nothing in this world that sets your soul on fire, that gives you that adrenaline rush, that at least you enjoy doing, and you want to do it for a job or something like that. So that's just never been something that I've been able to understand. And that's just me. Like I said, I'm not talking down on people who don't have any goals or whatever. That's just not who I am.
Yeah, because I mean, everyone should have goals, short term and long term. It's how you accomplish things and get, to where you want to get in life. Because like me, like I've always been very goal oriented, and I like to write down all my goals too. And if I accomplish it, scratch it off. Kind of like with my podcast, like I started out extremely small. I started out recording, just holding my phone up and just talking, into the Anchor app, and I've grew it to what it is now. And I actually like, I think about like what where I want my show to be long term, and I would like to kind of turn it into like maybe like starting my own wrestling promotion and call it like the O Face Wrestling, stuff, something like that. Like, but it's good to have goals, and it is hard to relate to people who don't, because some people are very content with where they are and they just want to stay doing the same thing. I mean, that's fine, but it is really important, and I do like your goals. You're shooting, to, WrestleMania, which is, there's no stage bigger than WrestleMania. Becky Lynch, and Becky Lynch is, a perfect example. Anyone could do it. She started out, like, if you remember, she was doing that Irish gimmick, in NXT, doing that little dance, and now she, main event in WrestleMania. Anything can happen. And WWE, like, the cool thing about them is they are signing a lot of indie wrestlers. They've been doing it throughout the last few years. And if you get in with WWE, that opens up the door for being in actors, because you're starting to see a lot of their wrestlers playing in movies and TV shows now too. So it really opens up the doors to other opportunities, and also training. Like, you could turn into a trainer at the performance center, or just working with WWE alone can really help open up opportunities outside the business too, when it comes to other wrestling promotions. So getting that far, just it really does a lot for your career, at the end of the day. And I definitely can see you there, and I would definitely like to see that happen for you in the future.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. I would like to say, like, I didn't get into wrestling to be an actress. I got into wrestling because I love wrestling. Like, I know, like, some people get into wrestling because they want to be models or actors or whatever, which is fine. That's their prerogative. I'm not. They ain't got nothing to do with me, so I'm not gonna, be mad at them about it. But again, I've loved wrestling since I was 12 years old, and since then I've done things, whether consciously or subconsciously, to prepare myself to be a wrestler. Whether that was taking judo at VCU because I read that Lita took judo at VCU, so I can like get some type of martial arts training, or whatever. Whether that's doing jujitsu now, whether that's making sure that I've, been in shape since like high school and stuff like that, whether that's lifting. Um, so there's been little things that I've done over the past 16 years to make sure that I got at least to where I am right now. And there's still going to be those little things that I'll do, from now until, I make it.
Exactly, and like you mentioned, like your goal was to be a wrestler, and we see that all the time where wrestlers, they get into the business because they want to be a wrestler, and then these other opportunities happen, whether there's something that they wanted to do or not prior, because at the end of the day, you can't wrestle forever. Just your body won't allow it. So it's good to have those plans for after wrestling. And we've seen a lot of wrestlers transition to those kind of roles. The Rock is the best example out there. He was the biggest thing in wrestling, and now he's the biggest thing in Hollywood. The Bellas, they've done a lot out, after their WWE career, and then even like Trish Stratus, she started her own yoga company, and DDP did it too. I mean, it's always good having those after wrestling goals as well, because you never know too. Like when your last match could be. People have career ending injuries in every sport, wrestling, football, baseball. Like, it's always good to make sure you're set up for life after whatever career you're in. Just because you never know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I mean, my wife and I have big goals and stuff like that for, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, all that jazz. So, and we both make sacrifices, to make it work. So I've missed birthdays and anniversaries and stuff. Well, stuff that you hear almost every wrestler say, that they miss or whatever. But it's just part of the territory.
It is, and that's the appreciation I have for wrestlers, because they do miss out a lot. It's very time consuming, the training, the working out, staying in shape, the events, especially like when you get into like WWE, because they're wrestling 200 plus times a year, and it's
Yeah.
just crazy. You don't realize how much they actually do. People think, oh, all they do is what you see on TV, but then there's the live events, and then of course the training and behind the scenes stuff, and also the wrestling is. I feel like it's more tougher than, football and all, because at least football and baseball, they have their off seasons. Wrestling, there is no such thing as an off season. So what you all do is it's just mind boggling, and it's amazing that, you all put your body through all that constantly throughout the year and all that.
Yeah, I mean it's tough. My knees hate me right now, but it is what it is. I'm doing more yoga, so hopefully my joints won't hate me so much in 10 years. But I mean that's what 20, 22, 24 years of playing sports and not taking care of my body. So here we are at 28 with knee pain.
I feel you. I hurt my knee when I was 15 playing baseball, and just ever since then on and off I've been having issues. I've been having issues recently. I'm 31 and I have back issues. I have knee issues. And, I've been doing warehouse work for years, and I've been going to therapy. My therapist is like, you need to stretch. You need to do all these stretches that I keep giving you, and I'm just horrible at keeping up with it. But stretching is low key one of the most important things you need to do to keep your body in good health, because you know, you put a lot of stress and all on your joints and all throughout the years, and it's just like stretching is it's key. A lot of people don't realize it. It's extremely important.
Yeah, you have to keep that mobility. I look at my son all the time. He can just pop down and squat, no problem. I gotta get my stance right and then just kind of try to slowly. Yeah, he can just pop down to a squat. So I'm like, dude, keep that because at some point, like if you just do do that. So I want him to be as healthy as possible.
Yeah, it's best to start when you're young and take care of yourself then, versus wait until you're older. That's one of the mistakes I've made, and I wish I can go back when I was younger. So I stopped drinking. I used to guzzle down sodas and eat junk food like crazy, and growing up, even when I played baseball, I really didn't stretch. Honestly, that's never been a thing with me, and it's like now I'm feeling. And I remember when I was younger, seeing like my uncle like squat down and how much trouble he'd have getting up, and that's me right now. If I'm laying on the floor watching TV, I have to do just kind of like circle thing when I'm like crawling up. It's like I feel like I'm an 80-year-old sometimes, and it's horrible. It's horrible. So anyone watching this, if you're teens, early 20s, take care of yourself now, because when you
Please.
get older, it's tougher.
Yeah, because I'll be I was dealing with one of my friends this morning in jujitsu, or last night, and then I was live rolling this morning, and she's like, "His guard's broken." Pop up, and I'm like, "Girl, like, A, I'm tired, and B, like, my knees hurt right now. Like, I hear you, and I feel his guard is broken. I feel it, and I'm just like, I just gotta." I just gotta rest right now, dude. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, but so hopefully, you know, this yoga and everything and will help. And my wife is a huge yogi, so she's super proud of me. We're on day 2, so let's see how long I can keep this up 2 days in a row.
I mean, 2 days is better than what I do. It's sad. I literally only do my stretches when I go to therapy, which is twice a week, and
Come on.
it's just so hard to discipline. Like,
You know what? I'm gonna message you and just be like exercises. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say.
I will appreciate that, because I need the motivation, because I just don't want to get into my 40s and barely be able to walk and stuff like that. There's been times where like I'm laying on the couch after a long day of work, and my wife has to come and help me get off the couch. It's that bad sometimes. So it's like, yeah, I need to get it now.
Yeah.
So Jordan, that wraps up this interview, and it was really fun. I'm really happy to have you part of the O Face Wrestling interviews.
Thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So do you want to let the listeners know where to find you on social media?
Yes. So you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Jordan_Blade92.
All right, and make sure you follow her on Instagram and Twitter. All the links will be in the bio below, and also make sure you sub us on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search O Face Wrestling, and we'll pop up. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you again so much, Jordan, for joining us today on O Face Wrestling.
Thank you.
Absolutely.